What's up, everybody? I'm Yogi Chris, PhD, founder of Ninth Limb Yoga, streaming to you from IMC Base 1. This is the Mecca, the capital of IMC Nation, where I live with the founder, AZD, and I'm captain, a rank under founder, running all the business here, also teaching yoga, also fighting jujitsu, also taking over the world, conqueror, and my new fighter name that I recently invented is Mr. What was it? Consistent. Chris Consistent. Yogi Chris Consistent DeVilbus. If I stepped up to fight, that's, it's totally not intimidating, but that's what it is. Consistency, showing up as my friend, keep showing up. That's what accumulates. Like I was saying to the officers today, when you water the garden, it has a certain watering regimen. And if you just like fall off for a month or two, the plants all die. You got to start over. It's not like you just pick it up where you left off. That's the organicness of life. We might think things are digital where you're writing a computer program and you leave it and come back. But there's something organic in that, where even if the numbers, the ones and zeros and whatever the computer code are still there, you didn't change anything on the keyboard. As you leave and go do something else, you forget where you left off. And if you're gone for way too long, you forget the skills it took to build that. So there is something lost. Like nature, it deteriorates unless you add to it. So consistency. That's why it's important not to take on more than you can really chew, because you won't be able to follow through with it all. So as you get a grip on your life, get a handle on it. Alex Altali, dang, showing up. It'll be more piece by piece, methodical, gradual transitions, or you'll have more a handle on how all the ingredients of your life kind of come together as your vibe throughout the day, how you feel throughout the day. Like it depends on how you woke up, how you groomed, how you worked out, how you ate. All these are obvious ingredients, but then how you communicated and all the other things of your day. I mean, those are just the basics that everybody goes through. Everybody wakes up, grooms, eats, works out maybe, but everybody has different jobs, but it all comes down to communicating with people, how you get to and from where you work, what product or service you produce and exchange for it, and like all of these things. So the ingredients of your day, your habits, when you become consistent with your habits, then it becomes possible to really change out your habits and, like a scientist of your own life, improve your life. And because your habits will make your life, that's just all it is. Consistency, making consistency a habit, then it's like you don't even know you're being consistent. It's just you've made a habit of it. But then take on some new activity, drop an old, take on a new, and then see how consistency plays out. When you become consistent and you discover self-help and understandings of the mind and psychology, then you have your hands on a tool of development that's kind of invisible to people. They only see the expression of your development. And internally, we may change much faster than our expression because of all of these habits that we're living in our own mental world, and we've forgotten how we're dressing and how we're presenting ourselves, how we're talking. We're talking from the old habits, but our mind has updated. So there's some incongruence. So being in communication with your environment regularly, making that an ingredient of your day, consistently communicating with the people that you have connection with and checking in on them and check in on yourself. It can come across kind of weak and pathetic if you're just like checking in on people, but that's my mentality. I'm checking this comm line. Where are they at? Where's their state of mind? And I'm always, I'm in service. So I have something to offer. It started with my yoga business where I prospected everybody on my social media. Not a single person was safe from my prospecting because I knew I had something to offer all of them. Now, you might not be selling something per se for dollar exchange, but you have something to offer. And if they're on your social media, then you're checking in and you're seeing where they're at, because they're either dropping off or they're closer to where you're at, or you could bring them up or something. That could be some catalyst, and you get a lot of practice taking charge of the communication, and they send something back and you reciprocate and they send something back. A lot of people aren't active in their communication. They're just like passively receiving shit. And then people are like sending, but based on like impulse, they're just being like moved to do something. It's an emotion or whatever, but you're coming at it like a strategist, like a hunter, like a predator, but not like you're not predatory, but I'm just saying you're coming at it like that's a difficult word for people to understand. I shouldn't even say that. It would be more like just a strategist, like a sincere professional. That's a good word. You're a professional with your life. If you believe in the secret and law of attraction and any of that stuff, you got to know that your communication manifests your tonality, your vocabulary, your timing, who you're talking, who you choose to talk to, when you choose to voice up or be silent or whatever. That's going to just have ripples of cause and effect, how you communicate. And that'll totally shift your circumstances in life. And a lot of it comes down to even decisions. Because if you decide to hit that person up for a job, or you decide to quit that job, like that's a decision. The communication is not that difficult. It's just some words, a text. Like the difficulty is the decision to make that communication. But that's invisible to people. People don't see the difficulty you have in decision making. They'll see it expressed on your face, or where you're like always thinking about it, or you might tell them how difficult it is. But the decision at the end of the day is just as easy as communicating. But there's emotions, there's resistance inside. And that all comes from beliefs, ideas, the expectations, things that you're assuming it should be, but maybe you haven't re-examined that assumption. And it can be a little bit shocking. And it's a very humbling to see how one was raised, and the ideas, our education are wrong, or definitely at the very least suboptimal. They're not the right. The etiquette, the morals, the ways that you grew up around your family, how you communicated, let's say, how you learned to communicate with mom, dad, sister, brother, how you learned to communicate with your family about your romances, and to your romances about your family, like all of that, those are habits. How you learned how to handle the energies of, confrontation, or, whatever. There was a lot in the family unit that was probably very toxic, and you learned how to cope with that, and that became your habits. And, what was I saying there? I was making a really, really great point. But, revisiting so there's a lot of assumptions in your behavior where another way to say that is like you have just decided to be a certain way. You've decided to cope a certain way. You cope to, when someone offends you, or you cope to, when you feel a little betrayed, or you cope with maybe a little white lie you found out you were lied to, or you cope with some mess. Somebody left a mess around the house or something. Like you develop coping because to avoid confrontation and unreasonable, negative energies and stuff growing up. And so you had that growing up, and now as an adult, you have it. And, as if you outgrow the shell of your upbringing and transcend and evolve, you'll look back and see that you learned the wrong ways to do it, that you survived. So it's right in the sense that you survived. So everybody, their beliefs and ideas are right enough that, because if they're here listening to this, then they've survived. So it was good enough. But to get to where you want to go, succeed, to ascend, achieve your goals, it's probably going to be a change. It's not just time put in the game. What happens is time put in the game changes your skills. That's why if you communicated with everybody on your social media and took charge of those communication lines and led the communication, and because you'll find shortcomings where you don't have value to offer. You think you do, but it's not getting across. And that's your lack of communication skills. And that at the end of the day is your value. How you communicate, you have a message, and how you communicate that message, because it doesn't matter if you have a great message. If you can't communicate it, they don't get it, nobody cares. And you could really have no message at all, but the communication, it feels so good when people listen to you. That's what happens like with girls. Girls have a lot of, if they put themselves out there, they can get a lot of followers and listeners. And it just feels good to hear them talk because they're girly, or, whatever. Somehow a guy looking at it, because a lot of these girls have a lot of guy followers, a guy looking at it feels like he's getting closer to the girl, and all of the senses that he's engaged with, because he's so used to engaging with a screen, a computer screen, because there's so many more senses in person, obviously. But just watching a girl on video seems like she's talking to him. It seems like it's for him, and it's soft and feminine, and he doesn't really have access to that. He doesn't ever have access to that ever in his life. Ever. Like guys, they don't have access to girly girls, to girls being feminine. The most they'll see is maybe on a show, a screen. They don't have access in person. It's not in their experience, you know? So they'll be listening to that because it feels so good, but there's no message. The message is void. It's void of a message. And then you'll have somebody that's trying so hard to get his message out, almost like me, you know? But the thing is that I'm successful in business, far more successful than anybody else in IMC Nation when it comes to IMC Nation business. So, you know, could always improve, will improve, whatever. But the numbers tell the tale, you know what I mean? And there's many different numbers to measure. And so we aim to grow on all the platforms. And I know people are watching the recordings. And at the end of the day, I know that as a side effect, the feedback of doing a show and getting clear on one's ideas and being able to explain it better, to keep the attention of people, to, you know, explore the edge of one's understanding even, is a very valuable, there's a very valuable byproduct to doing that. And then at the end of the day, I do hear back, like some individual, he listened to my podcast and he purchased tickets to come in person to the camp just based on my podcast. And I was like, that's hella dope. That made it so worth it. Like, wow. And I don't know which episode does that. It could be 6 months after the fact. It could be later that day, an individual watches it. So that's just what it is. So we do what we do. This is what I do. I'm like, a tiger roams the jungle, a snake slithers around a tree, a bird flies. I'm doing this. You know what I mean? So, as I was saying, we've learned, it's very humbling to learn that the way one was brought up isn't right. That, you know, for me, the history of humanity, what I thought it was, it's not right. What I think of geology and the earth sciences, actually, even as a PhD, it's probably not right. And I have a lot of evidence to suggest that it's very not right, that I was actually miseducated through 12 and a half years of university. Paying for that shit, you know, just not to mention high school, grade school, all that. So it's very humbling to learn that one's way of relating with women as a man, and for women too, women have a lot of trouble bowing down and humble, because women, they don't seek self-help. They seek to feel good. But a woman is not, I have not seen a woman very capable of self-help outside of being in relationship with a man who is very capable of self-help. Then he may lead her and she may have a chance. That's what I've observed. You know, maybe there's exceptions out there, and good for them. So guys, they also fail miserably at self-help. They need a right leader. They need a right lineage. They need a right, you know, encyclopedia of information, a right tribe. And I think we're it, IMC Nation. Stronger, becoming more capable, taking more ownership and control of your communication. And then what comes before your communication, your state of mind, you know, and then your habits throughout your day that create your state of mind. So as you get more and more mastery over your mind, emotional state, and ways of communicating, you'll notice that certain experiences, certain things, maybe even certain things that people say to you will just rip you off your vibe. You'll immediately have a negative attitude towards that. As you're going up day by day and you have good habits, good nutrition, good discipline, and then somebody says something, it could even be a hater or something, some invalidation. That's like, you know, don't care about the opinions of anybody. You know, don't care about the opinions of haters. You know, that's just someone else's opinion, and just like you don't have to accept that. But somehow it bothered you, and it's unpredictable. You're like, I don't know. A lot of times people don't even know to look that it's a communication, so they'll just be all flustered and angry and not realize that they were invalidated, or you know, they mishandled a situation and they were stuck thinking about it, and they just drilled themselves down emotionally because, you know, of the regret of that. And as you get more consistent on your process daily, you'll notice these little hiccups, these little road bumps, these speed bumps that as you're going along, you're going so well, you got momentum and you're chugging along, and then, and you trip. And you don't realize, like, look out, dude, this thing, how people talk to you, or this invalidation or whatever, or it's affecting you. You got to let go of that. And you got to identify it. And this is called, in a way, it's called being triggered. If something could be said or some little stimuli, a red Mustang drives by, it's just like, and it like triggers you into a negative state. It's an unconscious button in you. And people are walking around living with multiple triggers just being what's called restimulated to more or less degree. Could be 100% restimulated, 50% restimulated, 20%, any percent. Could be any percent restimulated. And when they have, when this happens, when you get a lens of perception because something's been triggered in you, you're going to misperceive things and you're going to make wrong decisions, say things in a wrong way. And so it's very important to stay consistent on your process so that you see a higher road, a higher way of being. And you'll notice when other people misbehave, and you'll notice when you misbehave. And that's called getting ethics on yourself, getting ethics in on yourself. When you've misbehaved, when you've been silent when you should have spoken, when you've spoken the wrong thing, when you did something you shouldn't have done or did nothing when you should have done something. When you acted out of character and you are stuck thinking about it, that's called out ethics. You went out ethics on yourself. You did what you thought was wrong. You didn't do what you thought was right. Right? Donnie knows what I'm talking about. It's just ethics 101. That's where what we've done with the IMC, what AZD has done with the IMC, has really taken L. Ron Hubbard's ethics in a combination with a bunch of other stuff. I mean, so many other stuff. But, you know, where I'm at in my journey, and everybody's going to be different in their journey. Like I was saying to Donnie the other day, it's a different starting point for everybody. And that's a very complex equation of what's your socioeconomic starting point. What's the money in the bank? What's your income earning potential? What's your current relationships like? What's your relationships with your parents like? What's your living situation like? What's your fitness like? Like there's all these ingredients. What's your reading level like? You know, so much. And then what's your commitment level? You know what I mean? So everybody's got a different starting point. And where I'm at in my journey with IMC and learning this tech of being a living artist, creating my communication, creating daily my attitude, how I want to behave in the world, what decisions I'm making, and understanding the ripple effect and what I'm creating with my, essentially from my state of mind, starting from my state of mind, because that's where my communication and my actions originate from. And the habits and behaviors that become my state of mind, that's what the AZD process is. That's what we call the Origins Camp. IMC base, shout out imcbase1.com. You can go there and check out Origins. That's the intermediate level training, the daily process, daily schedule, and the mentality around that. So, let's see. I was going somewhere with that. Oh, ethics. Man, it's been so where I'm at in my evolution, I just, if I spend a few days away from the ethics tech of L. Ron Hubbard, that text and reading it and understand, puts me back on course with something that a few days away from it, I'm drifting. I'm drifting away from pro-survival decisions, from being in control of my emotions, and not in a sense of like internally, so you got to read the book, and not internally like controlling my emotions. It's understanding of several things. It's first being able to check in with yourself. How are you feeling actually? For some reason, reading ethics puts my attention on how am I doing right now? Because so much of AZD's tech is not just the ethics, the way that AZD has expanded ethics into this art of living. It's, in the ethics tech of L. Ron Hubbard, there's a lot of statistics and measuring, your life, measuring money, measuring actions, measuring activities. AZD's stats of life are more human, less numbers, and qualities of communications, emotional tones of the people closest around you, this sort of thing. And that's kind of an intangible thing, but it is it's only maybe intangible because it's difficult to describe and explain. It's a real thing for sure. It's a science. It's not random. And so what I've seen is the ethics really transcended to this very human connection, where the stats are measured in the quality of life, if that makes sense. I feel like that didn't really deliver the message, but anyway, so what am I saying? Being able to check in with how I feel, not in a sissy way, but it's if I was really honest with myself, how do I feel about the situation? And have I misbehaved, or have I behaved correctly according to my higher version of myself? People like to say higher self. This model was auditioning. It said something about higher self. And I was like, is that? And then lower self. And I was like, are those two different selves? You have two different selves? And she was like, subconscious and then like conscious mind. So, okay. She weaseled her way out of it. But, you know, it's a frequency of being. Are you acting better? Are you acting worse? But you have this ideal of the character that you envision for yourself. And you may not be focused too much on it. So you don't really have a clear picture. You haven't thought about it too much. And one of the things with the teachings, like if you came around for the gathering this weekend, it's called Shadowlands Gathering, you're going to get a lot of perspectives to look from, to see yourself in relationships, in life, in business, frames of mind, storylines that are creative and imaginary. So you can really take back control of life, because it's kind of like, you know, when you see a movie and sometimes you're disappointed it's not as good as the book, because in the book you imagined it differently, but the movie, they kind of imagined it for you. So our storylines of life, it's like been imagined for us from what we've watched from movies and things. But when the story is told to you in a way that allows your imagination, your imagination to create how you relate with the female, how you relate with your own life, how you relate with money and these things. That's what each camp is, its own character that helps you to orient back to your true essence, because just time and again, you're attacking the perspective of these core things in life. Survival and replication. And we have the angle on replication and really on survival too, because a lot of people are surviving so well, but they're terrible at replication. So it's like, how good is that survival? You're not good at replicating, so your survival is trash. You don't even like it. You like it in as much as it buys you cool things or whatever, but it's like you're doing all of that for proper mating. And, you know, maybe you get fine girls, but you don't even really get them. That's why you struggle with it. That's where guys are. It's like 99.9%. I don't know the ratio, but I just don't see guys happy with girls. There's one guy. I've seen one guy when we're out and he's like a hairstylist, and he seems, man, his presence, it's in his being, and you know how he's put together and how he carries himself. Like I can tell there's something, he's a cut above the rest. But the last time I saw someone like that outside of AZD and him was, I mean, maybe Hypnotica, but that's like so rare, and I didn't really see him in person. So, I mean, all the guys I encounter in San Jose, all the fighters, all the guys that are in IMC Nation, they're coming up, and the guys in IMC are better than all the other guys. But the guys out there in the world are so drained, are so weak, are so confused, don't have a clue how to talk to women, don't have a clue what's going on. You know what I mean? Is that Sultan? Oh, is that Fernando? Oh yeah, just seeing who that was. I was just seeing who that was. Yeah. Okay. So when you get these perspectives, each character, Shadow Walkers, Chosen, Rise of Achilles, We Are Dragon's Blood. These are like the dragon. Achilles, Chosen was like a Jesus character. Shadow Walkers it's almost like this priest that goes through the shadowy aspects of the psychology, and, you know, helps pace her, holds her hand and walks her through the shadowy psychology, knows how to lead, see through her eyes and lead from there. And it's a particular character. So each time you apply your imagination to perceive more correctly, the world and how you relate with women and men, that rips you out of this make-believe matrix. And it sounds funny because your imagination is also make-believe, but the matrix they provided has a whole agenda attached to it, to destroy the man, to destroy the woman too, to destroy the family, to basically control human life, as, you know, how they say, like enslave them to the government and all that stuff. Like the agenda is in there in all the mass media meaning it means mind control. Media is the ancient goddess of mind control from Greek. That's what media is. So that's what all the media has been doing to you since the beginning of your birth, man. You know, all the radio, the public school books and everything, and how all of those individuals were influenced growing up generation after generation after the Nazi influence. So that's like 80 years now, or at least 70, 75 years. That's 2-3 generations at least. So you've become way off. Like, you know, they said like it was like Japanese that moved to Hawaii or something. And like the first generation, the people that moved from Japan, they kept their Japanese diet of fish and rice and whatever, and they stayed healthy. Then their children had a hybrid diet of Japanese and then American, like McDonald's and cuisine, whatever. And they were halfway American in their heart disease and obesity and all of those things. And then their kids, the grandkids of the immigrants, had the same rate of heart disease and obesity as regular Americans. Took 2 generations to just lose their more whole food oriented, healthy diet and get a more, not that American, yeah, probably pioneered the really unhealthy fast food, that stuff. There's other foods that are American besides fast food, but let's say the fast food phenomenon, like it took 2 generations. That's like 40 years, 50 years, maybe. What do you think it is with the mindset and changing of human history and educating people in public schools and forcing, standardized testing on people and all of the, Disney and everything educating the kids while the parents have to work? Because at the end of World War II, a man could provide for his household, but it took not too many decades to make it so both parents had to work. And so the kids are left vulnerable to this different education. It's just like the immigrants from Japan and how it changed their diet. Over 70, 75 years of media education and cultural education, then we are in a common storyline. It's very mundane. It's very sheepish. And we've lost control of our imagination. We are imagining our life the way that essentially the Illuminati or whoever, how the overlords wanted us to imagine it within a narrow bandwidth. We can be a soccer player, or we could be an accountant, or, we could be this, we could be that. We could be an Amazon driver. We could be a day trader in stocks or something. We could try to be whatever we want to be, but how free we are to think, it's been very confined against our will, without our free, volition, without our volunteering for it. It's just the way it is. We inherit a mind that we didn't program for ourselves. So at some point we wake up to that in our teens, maybe 20s, 30s. For me, it was around like 25 to 29. In that time period, I woke up to, whoa, man, I have a mind and it's got all these ideas and beliefs and behaviors and habits. And where did this mind come from? I have this mind. So, and then you just got to work with it. There's no other choice. Or you go back to blue pill yourself and go back in the matrix and forget it ever happened. Or a life of suffering, quote, suffering through your negative habits that, to change those is in some degree invalidating, the righteousness of your upbringing and how right it was. And so be it. That's what it's got to be. Part of the journey is going to be not losing respect for that upbringing and the people that made it, but at the same time, having no respect for it. It's like this double-edged sword. Like, they raised you wrong, but they got you to survive. You're alive. So it's like ultimate rightness and ultimate wrongness. And that's just what it is. You master the dualities. And then you're in your current life and you learn that all this upbringing, I'm living a storyline that I actually didn't decide for myself. I don't know why I have all these expectations in certain ways of myself. And when you come to like camps and you get trainings, or like if you were in a relationship, like girls that watch my podcast, and you're in a relationship with me, like I introduce storylines to you and ways of perceiving things that take you off of your way of seeing things. Because the way you see things is easily triggered. The installation of our belief systems, getting finally to the title of this episode, the installation of these belief systems and habits and ways of thinking, the storyline, the common cultural storyline, has a bunch of booby traps, quote, in it that, we're basically all snowflakes to some degree. People say things that we don't like and we melt inside and we get all angry or reclusive or sad or something. When we can't handle the communications from the world or from certain individuals, or certain kinds of individuals in certain positions, maybe of authority over us or something, or of, whatever, peer influence. Like, we need to get off of the storyline, and then you notice that certain communications pull you out of your imagination onto that common storyline that's just like mundane, black, white, and gray. And keep consistently working on yourself and life. If you use your imagination, if you study every day, if you're working out every day, making your wake up every day on the daily process that we teach every day, then life gets more colorful, more vibrant. And you'll notice the things that dull it, that take away from its vibrancy, and fuck those things. And those are outside things coming in, but it's all inside that's resonating. It's agreeing with the outside. That's where the hater comes and fucks with our mind and sticks in our head, because we actually have an agreement with that. Because they can't make me agree with them. I have an agreement with that. That's where, like, you leave home and you come back and your parents, they trigger you into being like an old kind of personality, because you actually have deep, latent agreements to that way of being that you have not been shining the light on because you've been out reinventing yourself, doing something different. And they make you, or it seems like they can't make you, but through their vocabulary, the tonality, the sounds and smells and the environment and all the colors and everything is pitted against you to make your attention focus on a part of you that's not, that you haven't been shining the light on. And it's like an open wound that just needs time to heal, because it's not, it doesn't heal by you just shining the light on it like that. It does a little bit, you become aware of it, but the healing happens when the light's not on it. It's like, you don't just keep exposing an open wound to something to make it heal, exposing it to things that make it sting. Like, you got to guard it, protect it away, give it the chance to heal itself. And so that's where leaving home and going and making a life for yourself and creating that for yourself is so essential. And then it's not even about ever moving back home. It's just you'll be able to interact with and be around your parents and or whoever raised you or whatever, and not be so triggered, because the part of you that they could trigger has overgrown. It's the lushness has grown back. It's not just all cut back and catered and formed to the way they wanted it to be. You've allowed it to form to the way you want it to be. And you've built up other aspects of your character that has matured and can handle communications, whereas before it couldn't handle it. It just became effect of their communication. And in that journey of mastery, because it's not like a light switch where one day you're immature and the next day you're mature, one day you're undeveloped, next day you're developed. It's so many aspects of your character that over time you develop them. And so along that journey, you will get triggered before you're fully fortified and like invincible in communication. And recognizing that, stay consistent on your process, and untriggering other people is very similar to how you would untrigger yourself. You change the sounds, you change the words, you change the tonality, you change your facial expressions, you change your environment, change the smells, you change your wardrobe, you change things. You change what you're doing right now. If you go take a run or take a cold shower or read a book, or, I mean, even smoking weed, but if you always smoke weed, then not smoking weed. You know, if you change what you're doing, that's where you take back control of this subconscious autopilot thing that's happening. And it may, just like the light switch analogy, it may not just fully untrigger as soon as you change one thing, but keep changing it up, because the decision to change is taking back control of the machine. And ultimately, to change your life, you know, get it away from that. And that's what it's going to take. And that's where guys fall short. And so the movement, they say it should grow, you know, tens of thousands strong. It should be exponential growth. The problem is that guys of the world are actually, their ability to take responsibility for their life and put it together the way they want is very, very low. And then their accountability and ethics in that matter is also very low. And it's painful to feel wrong about how you were raised. And so all these things go against them doing it. They don't seem to be strong-willed enough. They don't want to be honest about what they're seeking with women and a certain lifestyle. And they're not willing to take ownership of their life and go and make their own tribe and make it for themselves and fully commit to that. They're going to keep falling back on a support system. But I had support system and I fell on it a couple of times and I persisted. So I also believe it's possible to use the people that believe in you, which at the time it numbered my girlfriend, my best friend, and my two parents, and my grandparents, my father's parents. So I was fortunate. I had all that going for me. And now I don't need any of them. And I'm there for them. And I'm at a place now where I'm looking at building so beyond, and I'm 37. So now I have a long time. Let's build. I have fully all the integration, all the integrity that I need in this structure, in this bridge, in this skyscraper, in this whole cityscape that I'm going to build. I'll build a whole planet on this structure. I have the core, so it can support all the weight on top of it. Now, 37 to the end of my life, I can build something that'll take care of everybody and myself. I have the perfect lifestyle. I just keep showing up, and it only took me 8 years. And so I don't know how long you've been fully committed to it, but, you know, fully committed to change. The catalyst is whenever you started with me or AZD or IMC, depends on who you are, what point of reference you're coming from. And starting means stop just freeloading and start signing up. Get on programs. There's links in the description of this episode and this whole show. Leave a review, like it, share it, tell your friends about it. Right now, it's every Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific on all the YouTube channels I'm streaming to, Spotify, Apple, all this and that. So DM us, let us know how it's going for you. Enlightened Masculinity podcast and all the other trainings. I love hearing about, this is for my people. I don't just do this to be discovered. This is for my IMC people, whoever's watching. So let me know how it's going. And I'll see you guys next show next Wednesday. Os, Jay Guru Dev. Praise the Lord.